Right, we've got an opportunity now for some Q&A. So I'm going to ask Rommel, who's done a great job. Rommel, I'd just like you to open up Benny KD. Ben's had a great question, and then I'm going to jump to Colin Jones. I'm sure there'll be some other questions along the way as well. So, yeah, Benny Kinnaman Daltrey there. Could you unmute Benny? And Ben, I'd like you to jump in and ask your question once you're unmuted.
Hey man, thanks. Loved it so far. So my question was around, so there's something that me and Mick talk about a lot, and it's the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. But then you spoke about sort of keeping up with the Joneses and potentially damaging your health if everyone around you is a lot wealthier. So I just wanted to see how that plays out with all of you.
It's a great question, actually. I really love it, and because we have this component, and I looked at that, and I think that's part of the reason why I threw out that component about that we are competitive people, that we want to see. When you're in a great community, you want to see other people successful, and I think it comes down to having great scaffolding in life. I'm interested in your insight around this, Andrew, but for me, that's about understanding your purpose, your vision, your mission, your paradigm, your guidelines, your rituals, and most importantly, your values. One of the things that I love about our community is people are excited to see people be successful. They're not eating their heart out when they see others being successful. It's a constant force upwards. So for me, I think that when you're talking about you are the average of the 5 people you spend the time with, that's not measured on a bank account. It's about the quality of the character of the people that you're around. I'm really interested in your insight around that, Andrew.
I think I'd echo that. Absolutely, Nick. I think it's really about bonds, not financial bonds, Sam and Stone, but human bonds. Because what's really paramount, what really binds us, you could spend time with people that you work with, and you may or may not bond with them. But I think what will happen is it's the people that match your value system, and it's people who will listen to you, the people that you will care about you. That's really, truly, those are the 5 people that you're really closest to, not necessarily the people that you're working with. And so you're going to be the average, I think, Ben, of those people. At least that's my perception of it. I think you're going to be the average of those people that you have bonded most closely to. And that's why it's great to surround yourselves with people who are golden, people who are the best people who are better than we are, so that we could perhaps be inspired by them. And again, coming back to our value system, and what we value is going to be reflected in the people that we spend the most time with. Who are you going to save from a burning fire, Ben? And I think that's the important component here. You're going to really, I mean, obviously you'd like to save anyone from a burning fire, but if 3 people you really connected with are in peril, those are the people that you're going to be wanting to pull out of those flames, from my perspective.
Sammy, what about for you, hitting that one back across the net to you? I loved it as a question, Benny. It's a great question.
I'd absolutely just reflect what you both have already said. I think it's making sure those people are literally living on purpose. I don't look at it at all as that success ladder, but how close you connect with people who are living their lives on purpose.
Yeah,
and I think that's such what you have with your community.
Yeah, well, it's our community, actually.
Our community, yeah. Although I do harbour a slight resentment against Andrew's ability on the pull-up bar. I have to admit,
it's probably time to let go.
I can't let
It's probably time to let go of that.
Remarkable on pull-ups.
You know, one thing, Nick, that you said that struck something in me is you said the 3 of us are competitive people, but you said that competitive people aren't necessarily those who are just trying to outperform others, and it brought a memory back to me, and so as I mentioned before, I was a competitive cyclist many years ago, And then a competitive runner right up until my early 40s, was still doing quite well. But when I think about one of the proudest moments, one of the proudest competitive moments for me, it was actually when a friend of mine told me that he wanted to achieve a certain time in a specific race. And it was a race that I'd actually won before and knew that it was very much possible for me to win this race again. But we chatted and I could see how much this meant to him. And I could also see how much I could help him. And I said to him, look, I think we should run this together. And we trained together. I shared the bits and pieces that I knew about running and about nutrition. And I said, when this race goes off, when that gun goes, I'm going to be beside you the entire way. And it was so much fun. It was one of the most enjoyable events I ever did. We'd go by a water station and I'd say, his name was also Andrew. I'd say, Andrew, you just missed that water station. Do you want something to drink? Yeah. Could you put one over my head? So I was able to run back, grab a couple of waters, come back, douse him over the head, give him some water, and just the entire time cheering him on. He was a mid-pack finisher, but it didn't matter. He ended up achieving so much more than he would have as a result of our partnership. I was competitive, and my competitiveness was channeled in him reaching his goal. And the fact that I can still remember the events of that race better than I can remember the events of races that I've won, that says a lot. I think, Mick, that really aligns with what you're talking about.
But also what you've spoken about since the start of today, Andrew. That great quote that I know people love from Brené Brown: "Connection is why we are here." Like that memory. And that's why I love when I talk about relationships, it's about making memories, because that takes you to a place where you've just injected yourself with cancer-fighting drugs, because that memory has made you happy. And those things are real. And I think that's absolutely fundamental in happiness. I love this next question as well, because it takes us to a space where we've spoken about enough money today. And this is a question from Colin Jones. So if you could find Colin there and unmuting for me. The chairman is a critical member of our community. I love that he's part of our community. We're getting him to unmute at the moment. The chairman is also remarkably technically unsound, but now he is. I think he's with us now. So, Chairman, you had a question.
Yes, my age. Hi there, Andrew, Sam, Mick. Yeah, the chairman. The reason they call me the chairman is not through any great achievements. The fact that I'm the oldest man in the world.
Yeah. Still a good-looking rooster, though. He's a good-looking rooster.
Which sort of puts me in a difficult place when it comes to compound interest. However, for the younger members, my question is, I think that we all get that compound interest is the answer over time. I mean, you're not the only one who's writing about that. I think the message has come through, but I know that it's a lot easier said than done. Personally, over the years, over the last 30, 35 years, I'm 62, so I never had one investment that was given to me by a financial advisor that performed, ever. And I'm talking about endowment mortgages back in the day, kids' uni fees, little, pensions that expired and I took out, but not one of them ever performed, even close to what was. I think there's an impression that it's promised. I know it's not promised, but there is an impression that it's going to be real easy. So is the answer, put your money in a Vanguard index fund and let it ride? That's really my question. Or is it something else, more technical? Because if it's as simple as that, and that seems to be the way that the advice is going, it should be pretty easy. But I'm not convinced. But I'm probably convinced it's a better way than dealing with the fees of a financial advisor? Over to you.
Yeah, it's a really good question. There's a Nobel Economic Prize winner named William F. Sharpe who wrote a paper called The Arithmetic of Active Management. And essentially, this is what it means. If the market, any market, take the US market, if the US market earned 8% in a given year, then the aggregate return of all investors in that market, both amateur and professional, before fees, would have earned 8%. They would have earned the market's return. So those investors have fees, transaction fees associated with their investments. If it's an investment fund that you're buying, there's going to be a management expense ratio associated with that. And so when the aggregate return of the professionals is 8% before fees, essentially they represent the market. They're the vast majority of the money that's in the market. So when they earn 8, the market earned 8. When the market earned 8, they earned 8. But the thing about an index fund, Colin, is that there's such a small fee associated with it that if the market earns 8, you're going to earn about, say, 7.9% after a small expense ratio associated with the index. And you'll end up outperforming the vast majority of professional investors. There's something called reversion to the mean, where obviously you're going to get a few that do outperform the index, but those that outperform the index during one time period are typically those that end up underperforming the index during the following time period. So with a diversified portfolio of index funds, your returns aren't guaranteed. We don't know what the markets are going to deliver 5 years from now or 10 years from now, but there's one thing that's mathematically certain. And that mathematical certainty is that you will outperform at least 90% of professionally managed money after fees with a low-cost portfolio of index funds on an equal risk-adjusted basis. So when we say an equal risk-adjusted basis, if your portfolio is 60% stock market indexes and 40% bond market indexes, that's a level of risk. That's less risk than, say, 100% stocks. So an equal risk-adjusted basis means if you're 60% stocks and 40% bonds, and you compare with professionals that have that allocation to them, so typically a college endowment fund, you will outperform most college endowment funds after fees. So we have reams of historical evidence suggesting that this is reality, and it's a mathematical certainty. So in your case, when we look at expectations, we don't know what the markets will do going forward, but we know how to beat 90% of the pros. So we control what we can control. We can't control the markets. Nobody can. We can't predict where the markets are going to go. Nobody can. But what we can do is we can give ourselves the highest statistical probabilities of success by building a diversified portfolio of index funds. And we will, with mathematical certainty, beat over our lifetime 90% of investment professionals after fees.
Yeah, I think I get that. It's good that you're agreeing with that. What I just can't understand is over the years how not one of mine ever came close to, because they weren't in any high risk or anything. That wasn't the plan. It just never worked out. It can only be the fees. And recently I had a bad one where I actually worked out the fees that they charged me, and it was horrific. So
yeah,
but that was almost a trick. That was a trick that had been played. Yeah.
It'll actually be two things. Fees will be one, but probably not the most detrimental element to that lack of performance. The most detrimental element will be performance chasing. And so when you buy something, and this is something it's just part of human nature, we like to chase things that have recently performed well. So that's not saying that you're chasing them, but it's saying that somebody who perhaps is investing on your behalf is chasing it. They're seeing something that's made lots of money recently, and then they're saying to you, Colin, I'm going to get you into this because I know it's going to do well. Here's a really strong recent track record. This is what we tend to do as people, but there is a reversion to the mean. So you could get an actively managed fund that beats an index for a series of years even, but generally the reversion to the mean will have that same fund underperform, often after you buy it. So you've bought it, based on past performance, someone has convinced you to do that, or they were convinced that that was the thing to do, but the reversion to the mean occurs, and so you end up underperforming. But it's a fascinating element. It's a human nature thing, Colin, where people do end up chasing their own tails, and it's really, really common that most people don't perform very well, and that's one of the big reasons.
And I agree with all of that, and thank you, because you just reiterated what I know and believe, and I guess that for the younger guys who are still saving for their kids and everything, it's just an important lesson, because you wouldn't, if something had been running up, you wouldn't be buying that. You would actually think and say, why would I be buying that? That's been running for 5-10 years. But that's what financial advisors tend to use as their sales philosophy. I agree.
Yeah.
It's
The
bizarre, isn't
bad
it?
ones.
You're saying,
Yeah, the bad ones. Yeah.
give me one that's lost for the last 5 years.
Yeah, the bad ones. I mean, so the essence of that diversified portfolio is, say you're living in the UK and you have your UK stock market component and your American stock market component, and maybe another international with an emerging market component, and then a bond allocation. And the idea really is that you've got all of these different sectors within your investment portfolio, and some will perform better than others in different years. The idea really is to try to maintain a consistent allocation. And so if one of those ends up outperforming the others and your investment allocation is now out of whack, then the idea is to sell a little bit of the winner, add it to the laggards to bring you back to that original allocation. Now, this strategy will long-term reduce risk, because you're essentially always doing a little bit of buying what's high, selling what's high and buying what's low. So in essence, you're doing the opposite of what most people do. Long-term, by doing this, you'll mitigate risk, and it possibly, in some cases, can even enhance returns. So you can take lower risks and sometimes even enhance returns as a result of that. But it's so hard for the average person to do that on an emotional level, even when they know intellectually that they should be doing it.
But good luck to you guys. Back to you, mate.
Thanks a million, mate. Always great to see you. We've got another great question here from Graham Borthwick. Now, Graham is a long-term coaching client of mine who's, of course, lived across Asia and the UAE, and now is based in Germany. And Graham, great to have you here this morning, joining us from Germany this morning, up earlier than most. I'll throw your question over to you, mate.
Thanks, Rick. And thanks all of you for the session, and especially for not making this about the book, but saying that, here's a question from the book, Andrew. So I've read the book, I've set up our portfolio as you recommend. And my question is, what do you think is the best way to introduce my kids to this approach? Because they're 14, 16, they're young enough that they can get the benefit that, I've, like Colin, I've paid the fees over the years and learned the hard way. What's the best approach for them so that they don't learn it as I did, basically?
That's such a great question. I think the best approach for children overall is, first of all, look at the primary concern here is that over time we end up, hopefully, what we want is to spend far less than we earn, right? So that we can then pay off debts and we can invest. And so the idea of somehow giving them a respect for money, and so ensuring that they have their own skin in the game. So what a lot of people do, Graham, is they'll say, hey, I'm going to set some money aside for my child, and I'm just going to keep adding money to it so that my child ends up financially strong later down the road. Does it work? Well, not necessarily, because then later down the road, they end up just, they possibly just spending it because they don't have that foundation of where did it actually come from, the tools required to build their own financial muscles. So if at all possible, to give them some kind of incentive, it's to say, hey, look, you've got some money. I'd like you to earn a little bit of money. What do you think? You could do this, this, and this. So introduce them to the concept of a job, and then introduce them to the concept of investing, and show them that if they invest money, you potentially will top it up. So you'll give them a matching contribution. So perhaps you'll double the amount of money that they'll invest. So this is pretty common in the US with something like a corporate 401k plan. So in the United States, an employee contributes a certain amount, and the employer kicks in an element there as well to match it. I think doing something like this with a child is a great way to start out. They have their own skin in the game because they're actually earning some of their own money, but you're helping them by two things. One, getting them to earn their own money, teaching them about investing. So I guess we've got three aspects, and then encouraging them to do it by topping it up and saying, I'm going to double the amount of money that you're going to be putting into this thing. And then in that process, you get to show them how that money goes up and down. So they're not necessarily expecting it just to rise. So in that sense, you're giving them that emotional equanimity that's required for them in real life when it comes to market ups and downs. Because over time, the markets will continue to rise, continue to hit all-time highs, but they're going to be dips along the way. So introducing your child, I think, to some of those aspects early on is magic.
I mean, that's similar to what we do at the moment in that I do the matching on the pocket money they earn and things like that. But you're saying then that what they do have to invest is put it in the market similar to what I've done with ours as a way to educate them on the market ups and downs and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Fantastic. We've got at least one more question, and this question comes from a great mate of mine in Brisbane, from Shane McCann. He's in Brisneyland, my hometown, or my family's hometown at the moment. So I'm just going to ask Shane to ask his question. Shane, great to have you with us again today, mate. Thanks for all the support, as always.
Pleasure, Mick, and thank you, Sam and Andrew. And I think my question sort of came out as you were sort of addressing Colin's, Andrew, but I'll sort of throw it out there again anyway. But what's, in obviously your experience, what's the most common factor that you see that restricts people from achieving their financial goals, apart from not having enough money?
Yeah, one would be spending too much money. So believing that material things can boost their life satisfaction. So they'll spend money on stuff. And ultimately that doesn't actually end up enhancing your life experience. It's money spent on experiences. But we're in a society that's bombarded by advertisements that tell us that we should buy this and keep up with the Joneses and we're going to be happy. So that's one element that gets in people's way. Another element is chasing. I would come back to that, chasing past returns. It's that concept of, what's really bizarre is you take something like Bitcoin. I can't tell you, I can't even leave the apartment without somebody asking me about Bitcoin these days. And if it's not Bitcoin, last year it was the ARK funds. It was Kathy Wood's tech-driven ARK funds, which had returned spectacularly that year. But this year, no one's asking about the ARK funds because they're actually down for the year rather than up for the year. It's this weird tendency that people have to want to chase something. It's to look for a quick fix rather than looking at the long-term empirical evidence. Some people have asked me, why don't you invest in Bitcoin? Why don't you invest in these hot funds like the ARK funds? And I'll say something that just completely shocks them. Just for kicks, I say it this way: I don't buy that stuff because I'm greedy. And they just like completely shocked by that. But the idea that most people end up chasing their own tails, and there's again that reversion to the mean. When you're buying these things and they're supposedly a can't miss opportunity to double or triple your money, whether that's buying Tesla stock today or whether that's buying Bitcoin, you're probably looking at something that's significantly running on fumes. So I'd say those are probably, Shane, the two elements that hamper people from reaching their potential financially. That's
brilliant. Thanks so much.
It takes me back to a lesson from the late, great Brucey Todd, my father. Mate, if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. Absolutely. Now, we've got another question from another bloke that I absolutely love, the mighty Chris Shaw. And Shawsy is champion superstar. We got together this week and chewed the fat, told some stories. Some actually happened. So Shawsy, you wanted to share a bit of an insight into competition. Of course, context is your number one strength, according to Gallup, Shorzy. So you learn a lot from the past. So I'm delighted that you get a chance to share a story, mate.
Well, thanks, Mick. Thanks, everyone. It was actually Sam who introduced me to Andrew, probably a year or maybe 2 years ago. And Andrew very kindly came into our business and gave us a session on investments, and it really, it really landed. So I'm pleased to say, Andrew, I've set myself up, according to the process. But what really resonated was time in the market. So of course, I gathered the kids who at the time were probably 12 and 10 and had a little bit of maths background, and sat them in the garden and said, all right, here's a scenario, guys. We're going to set up this fund, and I'm going to try and teach you about compound interest. So I said, this is the scenario. You've got your pocket money, and you can put it in this place that makes it grow at, let's say, 7%. And let's run the scenario up until the age of, you're 20 and you want to buy a car or something. So that, with pencil and paper, plotting away, and, the daughter who's younger said, oh, the son's, my brother's got more than I have. Keep going, and then because she's got a little bit more time to go until she's 20, when they reach there, I've got more than you, so the competition element kicked in, and that's what made the penny drop for them. So I've set the 3 kids up with, with independent ETFs that, part of my platform, but, their pocket money, so 5 dirhams a week of their pocket money will go into their ETF fund, and I'll buy, those ETFs for them once a year. But I was really stoked with the way she reacted, I've got more than you. And he was like, that's unfair. And it was just a wonderful way of sort of pitting them together to make the penny drop. So I thought I'd share that.
Oh, I love it. I love that story, Chris. Thanks for sharing that. I love that.
Sure, Shorzy, always great to have you, mate. Great to see you this week. Looking forward to catching up again soon as well. Chris, the powerhouse behind the entertainer in the region. Such a phenomenal guy. Right, this almost has brought us to the end of our session. So we just get a chance to really recap and just stop and reflect on the importance of the 4 legs of your table, basically, and how if you take one away, the table just falls over. Biggest takeaway from today, Sam?
For me, it is about behaviour and bends on choices. We control our behaviour, and if we want things to be better, we can make these choices. I know you have choose your hard as a saying, but I think if we can behave ourselves to health, behave ourselves to wealth, and behave ourselves to a happier, more contented, best version of ourselves. And what I love about Andrew is we know that behaviour is hard to teach, even to very smart people, as Morgan Housel would say in The Psychology of Money. And I love the way in which Andrew simplifies complex topics and then teaches them to people about how they can adjust behaviours and reach for better.
Yeah, fantastic. So I love that. It really brings in that great quote from Steve Covey. You can't talk yourself out of something you've behaved yourself into. Like behaviours are so critical around building success. That's why we're so focused on rituals. What are your rituals? That's why it's such a critical element in building success for people. My massive takeaway is, as it typically is that I'm an includer, number one, is around that connection and relationships and how critical they are around happiness. I think that's really important. In a moment, I'm going to give Andrew the last word because I think he deserves that today. And it's rare that anyone gets the last word on you and I. I think that's a big win for Andrew that's about to come up. I just wanted to thank everyone who's joined us today as part of the To Be Limitless Thursday sessions. These are sessions that we put on for our community, and we've got people from Europe, the Middle East, Asia, Australia, New Zealand who've joined us today, and obviously Andrew there in Canada today. So absolutely fantastic. Looking forward to the session next month as well. It will involve a World Cup winner. Really looking forward to sharing a little bit more about that at the start of next month. I also would like to thank my fantastic team. I'd like to thank Rommel for the work in the studio this morning, Olivia for just everything she does around client experience for the clients, and obviously then the team of magnificent coaches that we have. Oh, and don't forget South Africa as well. Mandy has just reminded me we've also got some South African here with us as well. Whoa, nearly forgot. Mandy, thanks for the reminder. I'd like to thank my magnificent team of coaches. So my business partner, Peter Turner, the work that he's done at Chalhoub this week, piece of feedback we had yesterday, the best CPD ever that I've ever been involved in, 30 hours where I was engaged every minute, which is a phenomenal performance. He is absolutely world class. And there's so many people that have done the 2B APC here that have appreciate that. I'd also like to thank David Labouchere, Fiona, Tina, Vicky, our high performance executive coaches, and that we provide so much depth around in working with great people. So thank you, team. And then, of course, Melanie and Anna, our admin team as well. This is just an opportunity. Moments like this are an opportunity to let you know how grateful I am for the super work that you do. Andrew, over to you.
Thanks, Mick and Sam. I really appreciate being given the opportunity to chat with you guys today about this stuff. I guess if you want to see more from me too, I've got a website at andrewhallam.com, and I do have an upcoming book, and I have a sign up list there where people that sign up get a free download of my first chapter. So that's available. The book's title is Millionaire Teacher's Guide to Living Well. So it talks about those 4 quadrants of success. And so that I'm pretty excited to share that very first quadrant. With email lists, it's not something that I actually typically like. So I don't typically like to get loads of crap from other people. So I'm not interested in sending crap to other people. But I had this idea, I had this idea where I wanted to start this kindness lottery that I thought would be kind of fun. So with my little email list, it was, hey, sign up and you get this first chapter of this upcoming book. But I thought of something else that excited me, is I figured once a month I'd just pull a lottery from the names of the people that are part of that group that signed up for that free chapter. And I'll pull a name out, and then I'll say to them, say it's Mick. I pull Mick's name out and I say, hey, Mick, so I have this book here, Millionaire Teacher, that I wrote, which was an international bestseller. I wrote this in 2017. And so, Mick, I've just pulled your name out of here, and I want you to tell me who to send this to. So a good friend of yours you think might find this useful. So Mick gets to be the giver, and in a way I get to be the giver too. So I feel like I'm giving to Mick. Mick gets to feel like he's giving to somebody else, and I sign this thing. So say he gives it to whatever, he gives it to his friend John. Dear John, I write something cheeky in here that Mick thought you might like this book, and you crack a joke or whatever, and then I'll mail it myself after signing it off. And I thought, what a fun thing for me to do is, I thought, well, I'll do that for a while. I might do that for like 5 months at a time. And then I realized, no, I should do that forever. I should just keep doing that as long as I possibly can. Just that idea of giving to other people, and it's a kind of contagious thing, isn't it? When we give, we feel really great. I feel good giving, you feel good giving, and we all get to help people out in the process.
Yeah, and I love that, Andrew. We see contribution. I do love gratitude, and don't mishear me with this, but I always think start your day with contribution, end your day grateful. And by starting our day here, by you giving today, absolutely phenomenal. We massively appreciate the input today. I just had a message from another cancer survivor and dear friend, Guido, who said, excellent session, and I'm sure most people would concur, mate. We will be reaching out in the show notes, sharing how you can be in contact with Andrew. I think Liv has just put into the chat room where you can reach Andrew on his .com. We'll try very much not to clog you up with crappy emails, and we'll really look forward to talking again soon. I'd like to thank my great mate Sam Instone for his input today. It's always fantastic, and I know we've gone just a tad over, 1 minute over now. I know people have got busy lives and busy days, and it's getting late for Andrew. Thanks a million. Thanks for joining us, and we'll look forward to catching up soon.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam.
Thanks a million, guys.